ain't see me, you Stevie. Wondering how I reach more evolutions than Eevee and make it look easy.
What is up, Earth's and subscribers? It's Blerd without fear. Welcome back to the channel. All right, so today's video, I'm going to be talking about X-Men Forever #3, written by Kieran Gillen, with art by Luca Maresca, and color by Federico Blee. So this issue is doing a lot of things. It's got a lot of moving parts going on, and this is a series that is meant to be supplemental to the Fall of the House of X and Rise of the Powers of 10, and more specifically, the Rise of the Powers of 10 portion of that entire story arc. I'm just going to do a real quick review of the comic, and then we're going to jump right into some of the more spoilery bits of it. The story department, Kieran Gillen is doing pretty much everything that he needs to do with this. He is wrapping up some story threads that have kind of been sitting very dormant. One particular one from Immortal X-Men that has been sitting on the table and gone cold for about roughly 10 months. And that's a little story beat that was literally right before the Hellfire Gala of last year. You can probably figure that out for yourself what that is. And we also get some more story development in Sebastian Shaw. Some of it we kind of already knew from the previous X-Men Forever issues, and we also get a lot of interesting development between the kind of recontextualizing of Mystique, Destiny, and Nightcrawler's familial bonds that were revealed in X-Men Blue Origins #1 from last year. So there's a lot of good stuff going on here. There's a lot of plate spinning. I think Kieran Gillen's probably one of the few people who could have this many plates spinning at one time in one single issue and still manage for it to land in a way that I think makes sense. As far as the art department of this goes, Luca Maresca does a fantastic job and has done for this entire series thus far. Federico Blee, fantastic on colors, though one thing I will definitely say, the colors that Federico Blee uses are a lot softer, something I think I've talked about before in a previous video. It's solid. This is great all the way across the board, as far as from an art department standpoint. If there's any one failing I think I have in this is just that this is one of those series that sometimes, and it's not a critique of the writing here, it's more a critique of the writing of Fall of X overall, is that there's some story elements that come here that I'm like, oh yeah, I gotta go back and kind of take a peek at this because I kind of forgot this was a thing. It's kind of one of those things. But once again, it's a supplemental book, so it totally makes sense. As far as the more spoilery aspects of it, getting into it, we actually get to see something that was paid off from the first Immortal X-Men issues after the Hellfire Gala, where we saw the Sebastian Shaw had deactivated his mutant powers and also had introduced a new assistant. One that I thought was very interesting considering, and I think I even said this in my video, that they took the time to actually introduce this new character to make sure you knew who she was. Even though Shaw didn't care to call her by the name she actually introduces herself as. That part was pretty cool. We get to see kind of a throwback to that, and also seeing that this is also an artificially enhanced person as well, so not 100% human, if human at all. They're probably closer in kind to Omega Sentinel than they are to a normal person. The moment that they realize Sebastian Shaw is contacting someone telepathically, then they just completely unleash in ways very similar to a Prime Sentinel. It's funny too because in this we see that Shaw had an insurance policy on hand to make himself a mutant once more should things go south with Orchis. And there's a lot of inside baseball between himself and Emma Frost, and how she didn't trust him, the money that was left over and the rights to Krakoa, but also even though Emma didn't trust him, he seemingly trusted her enough to ensure that Krakoa fell under her ownership should something happen to him. So it's one of those interesting kind of dynamics between these two characters that have been going off and on for decades now. The fact that they have this love-hate relationship, and just the idea that, yeah, Emma does not trust Shaw, not even a little bit, that she would trust Wilson Fisk, the Kingpin, over Sebastian Shaw. That says a lot. That says a whole lot. But the fact that as much as he hates Emma Frost, Sebastian Shaw still trusts her. And I don't think it's necessarily because he does trust her. He trusts her to be her, which is a very different thing. And I thought that was pretty interesting. And also just the fact that, he kept those codes for the Sentinels that another character who, I alluded to earlier, a plot point from Immortal X-Men that's been sitting cold for 10 months now, And it's the fact that Cipher has been in what I can only refer to as a Krakoan no place, or like just hidden away inside of Krakoa. And this was right before the Hellfire Gala. The whole reasoning behind this was pretty clear, that Krakoa wanted to protect Cipher from what was to come, and Krakoa was right to do so. Cipher is very instrumental here in being able to speak the binary code that Sebastian Shaw hands over to Emma Frost to get to those on Krakoa who can use it, and use it to shut down the Sentinels. And also, just in terms of being able to relay messaging like an SOS in the form of a Krakoan language message, and all that sort of thing. I mean, yeah, it's probably one of those deals where I feel like this got a lot less fanfare in the issue. If there's any one criticism of that, I feel like this didn't get as much fanfare as it probably should. I mean, it was cool to finally see that it happened and that Cipher is back, but he is back in the middle of an entire firefight between mutants and Orcus, and it's cool to see, and it's definitely handled well. But I do wish maybe this would have gotten more time to cook than the Mystique Destiny Nightcrawler stuff. And it's not because I think any of that stuff was bad. I thought it was good. It was, in my estimation, much needed context, being added to their relationship. Even though I feel like if you read the X-Men Blue Origins one-shot, I feel like you should probably already kind of know the circumstances. The only thing I personally feel that we learn in this is more specifically what Xavier was supposed to give to Destiny. The deal that Destiny alluded to in the previous issue, we now know a bit more about what that was. And while I kind of assumed it had something to do with those memories, it does, but also more the familial bonds, the affection and love that Destiny feels for Nightcrawler. That is what is missing. Not so much the knowledge. She knows, but it's the familial bond. And we see this when Nightcrawler goes in for a hug and she's just kind of like, I don't love you. And it's not because I don't, but it's because I do, and those feelings are gone. And she had to yeet those feelings up out of herself because she knew that if she kept them, it would have given the game away. The things that needed to happen for Nightcrawler to become the person that he ultimately needed to become would never happen. And that part of it, not so much the why, but the actual happening of it, we knew about this already from that one shot. But here we just get the context. And the whole idea of Mystique wanting to unalive Destiny, and honestly, I kind of figured that this was not really going to go anywhere. If anything, the only thing that goes anywhere is the fact that Destiny is just so protective of Mystique that she doesn't want to tell her anything. She fears telling her anything about the future, especially now that she has access to being able to read the future again. And she knows that while they might win this battle, they're not going to win the war. And at the end of it all, Mystique will very likely wind up getting unalived if she pursues Charles Xavier to help get Destiny those memories back. But we also got to remember who else is gunning for Xavier. We know Wolverine is looking for him right now as of the most recent issue of X-Men number 34, and he is aiming to unalive Xavier. That's going to be a pretty interesting development, I think, just in and of itself. And then as for the rest of it, I feel as though the stuff going with Hope, we kind of already knew where this was going. The whole death and rebirth of the Phoenix, and the fear that if the Phoenix dies again, then it would die permanently. How they're plotting to reboot the Phoenix so that way it can come back and, I guess, kind of refresh itself. The Phoenix is afraid, and rightfully so. If you were a being, and I talked about this before, but yeah, if you were a being who has been immortal for eons, and any time that it died, it immediately came back and was as if nothing ever happened, and it was constantly going through a cycle of death and rebirth, knowing that if it dies, it's safe, and knowing that it's not permanent. And then you get to a point where you realize maybe this could be the last one. Like, that would be a very terrifying thing, I'd imagine. And right now, Hope Summers is the one who has to do it. And it leads to some interesting stuff. There's also that weird business with the Hope Sword, something that, I'm not gonna lie, I smooth forgot was even a thing, because I feel like it's been such a non-factor in any of the Fall of X stuff. Like, I feel like it wasn't really as major of a factor in Uncanny Spider-Man as it probably should have been. And then by the time it comes up here, which is literally the first time that the Hope Sword has come up in any way, shape, form, or fashion since Uncanny Spider-Man. And then it's just, turns out it's just a sword that's being passed off from Nightcrawler to Exodus to be given to Hope. And that sword, which, mind you, this we've known since Uncanny Spider-Man, that the Hope Sword is just a manifestation of Legion, the son of Charles Xavier, who has like the millions of different personalities and just kind of suddenly disappeared during the Before the Fall Sons of X one-shot. Yeah, that same Legion. The fact that the Hope Sword could just transform into a big-ass gun for Hope, because that's, you know, more on brand for her, that part I didn't really find, you know, anything wrong with. It was really just this sword is just a thing to be passed on to somebody else. Like, it just, I don't know, it seems like it was like borrowing from Peter to pay Paul. Like, that's what it kind of felt like. And it just, I don't know, I feel like that was a really messy part of this particular arc. I didn't really care for it. Like, it's not even so much that it's bad, it's just it's convoluted. It's like way too many moving parts for something that should not be so complex. Like, it just, if you wanted the sword to inevitably go to Hope, I would rather Hope have earned it. I don't know, just like, it just was, oh yeah, I'm just get this badass sword out of nowhere. Like, I don't even like saying that sentence out loud because it makes me feel like I'm one of these online chuds. But no, it does. Like, this particular instance feels kind of unearned. I mean, yeah, sure, it's the Hope Sword and her name's Hope. Get it? You get it? We actually kind of get a throwback in this to the mother of Hope, because yeah, as all this is going on with the Phoenix, you know, rushing off the cosmos, now Hope having to hunt the Phoenix down so that she can reboot it. With all of that, this leaves the Dominion in a pretty actionable position, because as we already know, that because of recent events, Jean, you know, potentially being resurrected and having the Phoenix power back, this is pretty much going to spell the end for the Dominion, because that's exactly what the Phoenix can do. The Phoenix is capable of destroying Dominions, which is why Enigma, the current Earth 616 Dominion, he is trying to get all the other Dominions to come in and help him, because, you know, once again, is while we think of Dominions as being just one singular entity, there are actually other Dominions out there, and very likely just exist in other, you know, realities. And they're all planning to converge on Earth 616 should the Phoenix actually be made whole again. So we know that that's a thing, but until that backup arrives, he has to rely on his own muscle to get things done. And while he exists outside of time, he can manipulate events. He can visit any point in time that he chooses. And right now, he knows he can't necessarily directly affect the present, because all of this is kind of happening within the spectrum of the White Hot Room, a place that exists outside of space and time like himself, but also a place he can't access. And what he has to do is, in order to stop the Phoenix from being reborn once more, he's going to have to stop the person going after it, and that is Hope Summers. But if he can't directly touch Hope Summers, how is he going to manage to do that? And they're doing this in a very interesting way, and that is by going back to what was effectively Messiah Complex, the story arc that introduced us to Hope Summers. He's going back to Hope's mother, a character we really have spent no time with. Hope Summers' mother has only really appeared in one issue of anything, and I believe it was Uncanny X-Men number 526, and even in that, she's not actually there. She's talked about, and it's because the mother of Hope Summers, Louise Spaulding, she is unalive. Hope Summers, she's never met her mother before a day in her life. She has met her grandmother, her maternal grandmother, but her mother herself is gone. But the Dominion, Enigma, he has gone back to the moment before Louise Spaulding became pregnant with Hope. Now, the funny thing about this kind of lends into some very Terminator-esque shenanigans, very reminiscent of some stuff that recently happened in Rise of the Powers of 10 regarding Xavier and Moira, him going back to find a child, Moira. That was kind of more of a T2, you know, Terminator 2 Judgment Day aspect of it, which is kind of funny considering these things are happening in a year that is literally the 40th anniversary of Terminator. It's kind of funny this is happening. But now Enigma seems to be going back and trying to pull a Terminator 1. And, you know, honestly, in this, I feel like, you know, this could go a couple of different ways. Maybe this isn't him trying to unalive Hope's mother early, you know, before 9 months before Hope would even be conceived. Maybe this could be his way of trying to conceive Hope, but conceive her in a way that's beneficial to himself. Because once again, Enigma is a sinister. A Nathaniel Essex at the end of the day is going to do what Nathaniel Essexes always do, and that's insert themselves into everything. We have seen this with what he did to Charles Xavier as a child, implanting his own genes. At least you have Mr. Sinister, not so much Enigma. Enigma didn't have any hand in this, but Mr. Sinister proper did, and implanted his genes in Xavier when he was a child so that he could take him over later as an adult, and has still been using that connection up until recently. And we also have seen him do this recently in X-Men 97 in regards to Nathaniel Summers and implanting his genes in him as well. This is all on brand for a Nathaniel Essex. I could easily see this going one of a couple of ways. I don't think, at least I personally don't think he's going to try to unalive Louise Spaulding ahead of time. I think he's going to try and change this, the scenario, which I think is very indicative of the theory that Dave Busing has proposed over on Comic Book Herald in regards to how the Enigma set up Moira McTaggart to become a mutant when under normal circumstances she wouldn't be. I kind of feel like this is all kind of in the same vein. I don't think he's going to try to unalive Louise. He is going to try to allow time to happen, but in a way that is beneficial to him and nobody else but him. What better way than to have Hope Summers born a Sinister? That would be pretty insidious. And also ensure him a passage into the White Hot Room. He would be able to kind of retroactively get himself in a position where he could better take control of things and maybe ensure that the Phoenix doesn't get rebirthed in a way that could make it permanent. But we know that's not going to happen because we know there's a whole Phoenix series that comes out after this. So once again, it's one of those areas where knowing what's coming can kind of kill some of the mystique of some of the things that you're expecting. But I've said this before, I feel like unless we are talking about Fall of the House of X and Rise of the Powers of 10, the current crop of X-Men comics, they are not really hitting the highs I feel they should hit. Like X-Men Forever, I feel does a good job of keeping everything with Fall and Rise in a good place. And I think that, Fall and Rise do a good job of telling their story. It's when you get outside of that. Like I even said this with X-Men number 34. I felt like this was the first issue of X-Men in a while, since Fall of X began. Like early on Fall of X, yes, great. But like there's been some meandering going on. And I feel like over here with X-Men Forever, this felt more on message. And I'm perfectly happy to say that. I know people are upset. I know people are mad. They're worried that their precious Krakoa is going to be taken away. But take it from a guy who is literally been terminally dialed in to X-Men since House of X. I think change is going to be good. You guessed it, obligatory channel outro time. If you're not subscribed to the channel, consider doing so. Clicking that subscribe button and tapping that notification bell ensures that you get more videos just like this one, and you don't miss any of my other content that I drop throughout the week, plus my live streams every Thursday and Saturday. And if you enjoyed the video, make sure you click that like button, keep it plus ultra, and sound off in the comments.